So it's funny in school. You study World War One, but just very briefly. It's mostly World War Two. We talk about, at least in the United States. I think this painted a pretty striking image of what World War One was like.
It was known, for its trench warfare and everything, but seeing, you hear about it like on the History Channel and stuff, but them setting up barbed wire to basically funnel people into shooting lanes and stuff, like it was very, not just graphic, but it was crazy. The flamethrowers coming out of nowhere and burning people alive, and them starting to run away because of the gas.
And that's how Perry Mason started this week with a nice little flashback. Decent budget, man. I'm noticing this budget. They definitely are spending a few dollars on this thing.
I think all period piece type things are very pricey, I'd imagine, just because of the cars. And wardrobe probably isn't too difficult. They just get pants that are a little higher and some suspenders, and you're all set. Go shop at some hipster boutique, and but I think that the cars, Jesus, those kind of cars, I imagine aren't cheap. Like even if they're refabricated, I don't imagine that that's something easy to come by. A bunch of 1930s cars.
Yeah.
The phones, they have to remake those phones, and I think a lot of those kind of things are a little pricey. And all the people in hair and makeup for hours, because you can't just come in and look normal. You have to look like you belong.
Well, that church scene, which we'll talk about a little later. And the funeral, that definitely, imagine having to costume that many people and do the makeup and stage it, and yeah, definitely a lot of time, effort, and money. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about Perry Mason, Chapter 2 tonight. I'm Brian here with Spencer.
Hello.
And this is Pulp Mythos. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. We discuss Perry Mason on Sunday evenings as long as it's running. And then Fridays you can find movie reviews. More content on the way very soon. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and continue this discussion. So yeah, as I said, the opening of this episode gave us a little, we're starting to see those flashbacks of Perry Mason. We knew he was in World War One. We knew he was dishonorably discharged, but we didn't know why. And so this episode sort of told that story throughout, which I like the way it was done, especially the reveal at the end, which we'll talk about later.
I think that, we talked about it even in the preview show where we talked about how gruesome World War One was. I was trying to say that without mumbling or being like, World War One.
Whoa.
But how, PTSD, there's a lot more research on it now, a lot more things that are, studied by universities and everything, but they didn't have those kind of studies back then. But seeing the effect it has on, it's an acting thing, but seeing it kind of brought to life is putting a different perspective towards it, because there is, and this is not making lightly of what people see now, but it was just different. I imagine the PTSD of the Civil War, where they're literally just lined up and people are getting hit with cannonballs and stuff. That would be terrible. I think now with the advancement in weapons and technology and everything, it's just different.
Yeah,
because people getting shot or blown up, it's still just as bad. I can't imagine seeing your friend getting blown up, but I imagine that the death toll is much higher in those kind of wars.
World War One was so barbaric because of the weapons they were using. A lot of the techniques and the things they were doing in that war were made illegal, and countries have agreed not to do that shit anymore. Whether it be the flamethrowers or the chemical weapons, and just the whole way in which they fought. Not saying countries don't do that shit, but for the most part, it's been abided by since that war. But yeah,
like you said, it was it was kind of like a mixture between the Civil War when they were basically just in lines, but mix that with artillery and firepower that far exceeded what they had back. I mean, it was
Yeah.
all countries that were involved were trying to figure out new ways to fuck each other, and boy, did they do a good job because it is bad.
Yeah. And Perry Mason was in the middle of all of it. Um,
And they said he was a captain. That's what I
yeah.
heard him say. You know, captain.
The mystery of this season is a child was killed. Basically, there was a ransom. The Dodsons, little baby Charlie, was kidnapped, killed, and we're trying to figure out who and why exactly this took place. We know from the first episode that one of the police officers is involved, so that's confirmed.
Enos.
We know, yeah, we know that, and that's about all we really truly know. We know that Baggerly, what was this for Herman?
Herman.
Herman Baggerly is the one who is rich, investing a lot in this particular church. The Dodsons are part of that church, and he's trying to take care of them and get any. There's the police think that the Dodsons are in some way involved, and he's definitely sure that they're not. I don't know anymore. Like I said, we'll get into all the details. There's just so many pieces this episode. So we're introduced to a new character, Officer Drake, and Officer Drake he's a African American police officer in the 1930s in a major city in L.A. So obviously he's going to be dealing with a lot of issues from his fellow police officers. They're not going to treat him fairly. They're going to belittle him and basically treat him like he's beneath them.
Well, they even mentioned one of the, and I wasn't Enos, it was the other one whose name escapes me at the moment, but he said, you're really good. I wish that it wasn't the way it was, but you're not going to make detective. And because he was picking all the pieces out, because
Yes.
Enos, who was there that night, Enos that was, knew everything that happened because shit, he was the one that did it. But for him to try and, say, oh, well, maybe it was the other way around, trying to, make it different to make kind of cover his own tracks. But he was like, no, the blood droplets were, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah,
I was hoping that it would have kind of threw the Enos guy under the bus a little bit, through some people looking his direction, but not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, I think his time will come. But yeah, Drake has definitely got that detective ability. And the show shows you that he's able to work through and start figuring out what's going on. And I'll go ahead and jump to the end. He's questioning the blood drops, the path of them. He realizes that there's no way they came from the roof down, that they went out, and he's able to track where that body in the last episode fell, and he's able to start piecing together. There's more to this than we know, and he.
Now, did you see what he saw at the end? I didn't see what he picked
It
up. I couldn't tell what
looked.
it was.
It appered to me to be false teeth, a piece
I
of
was
a
going to
false
say
tooth.
a retainer. So
That's sort of what it looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be a big deal. And then we saw in the preview that the next episode, Perry Mason is interacting with Drake, and clearly Drake doesn't want any involvement in this. There's a scene where he's punching Perry Mason, and I'm sure Perry Mason's pressuring him to reveal what it is he knows, and he's just like, "Nah, man, just let the shit go." But I have a feeling that Drake's going to become part of the Mason team.
That's what I was thinking. I was actually, me and my wife were sitting there watching it, and I said that. And because we were talking about it, I was like, I think that he's going to end up helping solve this, because, like you said, why else would they, bring this character in to basically be, now whether he'll figure out the whole thing or whether he'll figure out the cops' involvement, I think that's a big part of the puzzle. But,
well, he's the inside. We know there's corruption in the police, and he's an insider in the police department, so that definitely assists Perry Mason's investigation.
Yes.
Um, Matthew Dodson, the big revelation this episode was that he is Herman Bagley's son, and that it's been kept secret. Nobody knows except them, and that Baggerly has brought him into the town. Giving him some money, getting his business going, and sort of being a father as much as he can without openly acknowledging that it's his son. Um, didn't see that coming. I mean, it's just like
No.
okay,
Well, we talked about it even in the first episode. Where did all that money come from?
yes.
And then in this episode, it brought to life that he had a bunch of gambling debts. So now, is this part of the reason why? Is it like, I don't,
Yeah,
I'll let you continue because I didn't want to jump too far ahead, but
no,
there's a
no.
lot
He
of,
he gets arrested, and the police. I think some of the, at least the DA, which we're introduced to the DA, legitimately. Yeah.
dodgeball, Office Space. Where's my
Yes.
stapler?
Yeah. I love his little mustache and his um. Yeah, him being the DA, but he. I think he legitimately thinks that Matthew's probably really guilty because the evidence does look legit. Unless the DA's in on it too, which we don't know at this point. But they do arrest him, and they tie it to the gambling and the fact that his dad has money and that he knew about the money. I mean, it does look like he's guilty when you look at those pieces of evidence.
Yes. Now, and just like Perry said a little bit later, you know, just because something happens doesn't mean that they're guilty. Um, like, do I think that I'm not 100% sure whether both of them were involved yet or not, but I don't think that either one of them intended for their child to die, but that doesn't mean that they weren't involved in the whole thing to begin with. I don't know.
Emily, we discover, is had an affair. She met a guy in the church named George Gannon, I believe, and
Yes.
she had an affair. She called him a lot. They had a whole thing going on. Wrote letters back and forth. Well, Perry Mason finds his home, and it appears as if he, committed suicide. He used like a shotgun, blew his head off, and um, there's a suicide. Basically, says he did it. Him and her. There's money burned in the fireplace. It all appears to be a setup. I mean, either it's true or it's a setup, or there's more to it. We don't know, but it does shift focus to Emily now. Perhaps Matthew's innocent. Maybe it was Emily all along who did the kidnapping and the murder. And I'm not sure. I don't know. I think this is a setup, but we still don't have all the pieces. I don't know. What do you think about that whole sequence?
I think that I think that she's involved, but I don't think that she had anything to do with the child's death. Um, I'm not saying that parents, I mean, there's lots, like Casey Anthony, there's a lot of people who killed their kids, but both of the characters in it, I don't feel like either one of them were responsible for the child's death. Now, are one, if not both of them, involved in this from the jump? Maybe. But I don't know why yet. There's, he had gambling debts, but we saw, we reviewed Uncut Gems. Gambling does make you do crazy shit. Yeah. So I don't know that maybe it wasn't him, but Emily, when she found out that George died, the amount of grief that she had far exceeded the amount of grief that she showed for her kid, which to me is kind of weird.
Yeah, she was definitely in love with George. Yeah, absolutely. We are introduced to a character named Alice. She's been in all the previews. We know she's, I guess, one of the main preachers at this particular, I guess I'll call it a mega church. That's basically what it appears to be for that era.
When you it definitely was, because she said, she talked about, for all of you listening to us on your radio boxes. So they're recording it and broadcasting this. So just like nowadays when they broadcast the stuff on TV and they ask you to mail in your tithes and, whip out PayPal, or I don't know how they do it now. I don't pay attention to that shit, but uh, I imagine back then it was very similarly set up. So we talk about like birth of mega churches. This seems to be what that is.
Alice, so we see her several times throughout the episode. When we first meet her, she now tell me if you agree. I'll just combine all the times we see her. We see her throughout. She seems to be a true believer. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, I didn't feel that she was a scam artist. I didn't feel that she was bullshitting. I felt that she really cared and that she was really believed what she was saying. Maybe, I don't know. That's the based on the performance what I was getting from it. Now that can be completely, we don't know where the
Well,
story is going, but my assumption is that's what the show was trying to tell us. I don't know if do you agree or disagree?
I disagree, but only based on the performance about the like, catching the devil and hanging them by their neck and stuff. She went a little rogue on that. So when we were talking about how maybe the church is involved in all this, um, I think that for her to stand up and, basically be like, catch this devil. I want the DA to do this. I want the jury to convict them to hang, and I want the hangman to snap his neck and bury him. What was it, like 1,000 feet deep, and let the worms consume him and take them from this earth. Like that big speech to me, even at that time frame, you look at mega churches. That one wasn't being recorded, so that one wasn't being put out to the masses. However, a speech like that made me feel like she was trying to make sure that the person who you can't see me, so I'm doing like air quotes and stuff. But like, I was like, wait a second. But I'm thinking of the person that they want to be guilty. She wants to make sure that, because to me, that's swaying the jury. If she has that big of an audience, that big of a, listening crowd, think back then, like nowadays, it's very hard even for people to. Have you ever been selected for jury duty?
No.
Oh, it sucks. But it when they ask you questions, it's like, have you heard of this case? Would you be swayed? Do you have any previous, biases towards a drunk driver or somebody who assaulted somebody? Or so there's a lot of things that they ask you, but she just swayed that whole city into wanting to convict this person. So whenever they finally try to put somebody on trial, immediately they're going to hang for it. So to me, that makes it open and shut. It closes the case like immediately, and they won't look further. So that's what makes me believe that the church and possibly her are involved.
The one scene that was, I think the scene that was confusing me, and the reason I said what I said was when she's sitting at the table and she's writing the sermon, or she's trying to come up with it, because she really in that moment seemed focused on the message she was trying to get through. Now, there was a odd scene where she's in the room and there's the mirror and you hear sort of a baby cry, like she's thinking about something. Now, you could perceive that as a memory, or you could perceive that as her, how she feels about what happened and how she wants true justice. Now, obviously, we got, well, how many more episodes? Like 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Chances of her being completely clean are slim. But to me, I'm giving them the benefit. To me, it's too easy, and that was the whole. You know what I mean? Like, it's too easy for her to be, okay, the head of the church is the bad guy. Like, that's to me easy, and I hope it's not that simple. I hope it's more complicated than that. I mean, if she is involved, fine, but I just think it's too easy to to say, oh, clearly she's corrupt and she's the
Well,
bad guy.
like I was saying, I don't think that there's any one bad person. I don't know who the main bad person is, but the her mom, or I don't know if they
Mhm.
just called her mom or if that's her actual mom. I don't know, but she's a she's a main person in 6 Feet Under. But that doesn't have anything to do with that part. But she it goes back to what we said about them hiring all the HBO people. It
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah.
she was in that too. Um, but I don't think that Alice is a, like I said, I think she's a figurehead. She's like a showpiece. I don't think that she's the one running shit.
Hmm.
So maybe that was that speech at the end is her speaking
A
out
power
against.
play. Could have been a
Yeah,
power play.
like she could be throwing her mom or whoever under the bus, or even the Baggerly guy. She could be throwing one of them under the bus, trying to make herself the head of the church when they
Hmm.
inevitably get taken down. So
Could be.
that's what I'm
Um,
saying. Like I think the church is involved, but I don't know who or why yet.
it's definitely really good performance. I can't remember. She's the orphan black actress. That's all I
It's like
remember.
Tayana or something like that.
Um,
Tatiana Ali.
so we get.
That's Ashley Banks, by the way.
Oh yeah, is it Will Smith, Fresh Prince?
Yes.
Spencer's a huge Fresh Prince fan, like huge. How many times have you seen that show?
Dude, I've seen it a bunch, but this is the first time that they've streamed it on HBO. So I'm like, I've been jamming it over and over. It's great.
Yeah. Well, you said because back in the day you lived in Germany and
Yeah.
that was like a you had tapes of it and that was like the only thing you had to watch.
One of my friends, like he was a Philly fan. Like he lived outside of Philadelphia. He, was a big Eagles fan and stuff. And his aunt used to send him all the tapes because when I was in Germany when I was young, they they had AFN, which was, they showed like two channels.
Yeah.
There was so they never showed that show. So his aunt would send him the VHS tapes and we would sit down and watch it. So I watched it like I was one season behind because we were in Germany, but dude, I used to that was my jam.
And if you're listening this far in the review, thanks for listening. We will be reviewing Independence Day, ID4. It'll go up next Saturday. Friday, we'll be doing Hamilton. So we're actually going to have two reviews this coming weekend. So the third, Hamilton, and the fourth, ID4, starring Will Smith. So back to Perry Mason.
Sorry.
John, nah, that's fine. No one typically listens past about 12 minutes. If anybody's still listening, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, John Lithgow. We got a little bit more about him. We know that he, I guess, had a partner or something that ended 6 months ago. We got a little hint at that, whether they died or left or whatever. We know that he wants to be an it guy. He likes at that being at that I don't know, cigar drinking club or whatever the hell it is. He wants to be known as a legit, top guy in the city as far as the law is concerned. And good performance, interesting. Um, is he a good guy? I don't think he's involved in the case at all, but still doesn't mean he wouldn't do whatever it takes in order to make his name. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think he's a bad guy, but I do think that, he'll throw anybody and everybody under the bus to be able to, like you said, be that top guy, be the lawyer.
Yeah.
Because I think that the other associate that left probably he either threw them under the bus or they didn't like the way he practiced, or maybe he was too ambitious and they were like, dude, I'm not lying on the stand, I'm not doing that, I'm not taking this case when this guy's clearly guilty. I think that it was more along something along those lines than it was that they passed away.
I talked about the funeral sequence a few moments ago, but just we went through the content of what happened. She gave her little speech and got the audience all going. But from the technical side, it reminded me. One of the things I love about like Scorsese films or Francis Ford Coppola, when they whether it's Godfather or whatever, when they do those shots where you have 50, 100, 200 extras, and they're all playing their part and they're all doing what they need to do for the scene. And just thinking about how much of a pain in the ass it must be to set up some of those shots. So not only the actual the service, but the exiting the building, coming down the stairs, and all the people in the press and everyone crowding, the police coming up to rip Emily away and arrest her, and just all the commotion, like the technical stuff like that. As someone who appreciates movies and film and you know things like that, always pique my interest, and I always think about the mechanics of how you would shoot something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it too is camera angles, and you know
Mm,
Francis and Sophia Coppola do a lot of that kind of stuff. So The Godfather is a great example of that. Uh, but I think a lot of it is different angles and having multiple cameras on each shot, because when they're running down the stairs, having two cameras is the only thing that makes sense, because it shows like them crowded, and then in the same shot it shows her getting pulled away. So uh having it be that fluid of a transition, it could just be some great ass editor, but
true. Yeah.
the way that they were positioned seemed more like it was multiple cameras.
Because I was trying to really pay attention at how many people were in the individual shots. Because you're right, you could easily do stuff like that where it's less people than you think, just the way you have the camera position and the way you cut it. But there were a lot of shots where I was like, damn, that's a lot of people. And just thinking about how do you reset shots like that, and the actors have to be on their A game, because if they screw up, everybody has to you have to reset that, whatever that particular shot is. So those scenes, I think back to like Godfather 2, the when De Niro's doing that assassination, and they have the celebration going through the streets. I mean, that whole sequence is like, man, how the hell do you shoot something like that, or anything in Apocalypse Now? Like, there's
Yes.
so many scenes in that movie where I mean, my mind is blown at that movie has such a reputation because of just how ridiculous the whole situation was with shooting it, and Marlon Brando and everything. But yeah, I appreciate things like that, and it's cool that in this episode, between the World War I stuff and then the funeral and sequence, that we're getting that kind of stuff in it. So I'm like, wow, high caliber directing, going on for this show.
Yes. Like you said, it's the church sequence, the big spanning shots to everybody. A lot of, from what I hear in other movies, when they do stuff like that, or even The Dark Knight, when they blew up a couple different things, they were like, we had one shot, this is
Mm.
one chance to do it practically, do like a practical blow up, not CG. But they were like, we get one shot at this, we fuck it up, it's done. Like, we got to throw that shot away. So you're talking about everybody having to be on their A game. If you have to reset 100 extras and reset, all the principal actors and redo all this stuff, pull the car back out, you only have this street for this many hours. Like, so you talk about A game. I think that to me is what boasts my opinion of multiple camera angles, because
Yeah.
say somebody's face was fucked up or somebody did something, you basically just showed the other shot for a second and then you can go back to that shot when it was fixed or whatever.
It's one of the things I love about HBO. We praise HBO a lot. We do a lot of HBO shows on here because that level of quality, and that they put in all of their shows. It's no one else really does that on that level, and that's one of the things I really like about the network. So we have Perry Mason's still searching for that thread. You know, he goes into that one room at the beginning where there's, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different kinds. And clearly that's going to be a big part of this puzzle. And as we said earlier, Drake finds, he's able to discover that in fact a body must have fallen over the building and landed there. He finds evidence. But the big reveal.
Oh, shit. You know what? I just thought about this. George Gannon that had his head blown off, he was the one that fucking fell off the roof.
Oh, shit. Was he?
Yeah. The
Wait, whoa.
Because
Damn.
remember, Perry was looking in his mouth, and it was like, it looked like a retainer. It looked like part of his.
That you just did. Yes, that's who that was. Damn, I can't believe I'm so. Well, shit, dude.
I don't know why I just remembered.
Bravo. No, you're right. It's a piece of the show showed us, and I didn't piece it together. And yeah, clearly that's who that was. So okay, that explains. So okay, let's go back. So he went over the building. The cop got the body because he saw it. He staged a suicide, set all that shit up. Clearly he knew about the money because Emily was having an affair with George. So George was the one giving all the info. He was the asshole who was setting all this up. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So I doubt Emily knew that in other words, Emily and Matthew, I don't think are guilty at all. No, George, she was having an affair with George, and George took all the he talked to her all the time, so he knew about all this stuff, and he used that information to get the kid. And remember, he didn't want the kid dead. He mentions it last episode that he was horrified by what happened.
Yes.
Okay, well, shit, we solved some stuff, man. Some people are like, yeah, it was obvious, asshole. You couldn't figure that out. Huh. Okay. Cool. That's that. Okay, now I have a better. So now the question is, who did George go to? Who was he working with? And why did the baby get killed? What happened there? Those are the mysteries now.
Yeah, was it an accident? Was it on purpose? Was it somebody trying to punish them for something? Like, who knows?
So there you go. All right, cool. So that's what we do here. We as we talk, keep in mind, anyone who's listening still, we go from from watching immediately. I jot down some notes. We talk for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we record. So, and sometimes I'll try and go online if I have a few minutes and look up other reviews and gauge what people are saying. I didn't do that this time, so perhaps other reviewers have already pointed out all that stuff. I don't know. But all right, cool. So the big reveal at the end, besides the fact that we know the retainer, because that makes that scene so much more important. because the way it's staged is just like, oh, this is something big happening. But my assumption was, oh, Drake is figuring out that there was a body there. But you are completely right. They had a whole scene where Perry Mason pulls out the retainer or those false teeth or whatever, and they're telling us, they both, it syncs up. Drake is discovering that's George's body, and when Drake shows Perry Mason that piece of tooth, well, I'm assuming that'll happen in the next episode. All of a sudden, a whole bunch of shit's gonna, he's gonna start figuring stuff out.
Yeah, he's gonna start piecing people and things together.
So, big reveal after that scene was why Perry Mason got kicked out of the military with a dishonorable discharge. He was referenced to be the butcher of wherever the hell the battle took place.
Blaviken?
Okay.
No, that's
sure. I don't
remember where it was.
I don't know. It's one of them European places. Witcher's inspired by Europe, so close enough. So we find out what happened. He was in the middle of the battle, and he decided to put down his wounded men. They were still alive, but they were severely wounded, and he killed them. Killed several of them. That is the reveal. Um, Gruesome sequence. Curious if we'll go more into that. I don't know what you think of that whole part.
Um, damn. Uh, for a second, I was not giggling inappropriately because all I could think of was Major Pain. And he was like, "Want me to take your mind off that pain, boy?" Like,
I love that movie.
well, when he saw the first guy, that's all I could think of, and then he shot him in the head, and I was like, "Oh, this is not going that direction."
I need to see if that's streaming. I haven't seen that in so long.
I watched it like probably 2, 3 months ago on
Dude,
quarantine.
he eats that cupcake.
Yes,
It's like the greatest. That's like the greatest scene ever.
he farts and knocked that kid out.
Dude, that shit. Every time I see it, it gets me.
But
Oh,
like that was the first thing I thought of, and then he shoots him, and then they show the guy holding his own guts, and then the guy who's like drooling and screaming because his legs, not there, and his face looked like it was burned, and the one guy who was begging him to do it. So it that I mean, he's trying to do what he feels is right because the Germans are running towards him.
yeah.
They're gassing the whole area. Like it's those guys were probably like we were saying beforehand, they weren't going to get medevaced out of there. There was no helicopter coming in to pick these guys up. Like they were dead. So he just ended their suffering. Now, do I think that he should have? I don't know. I've never been put in a situation like that, but good Lord, like I couldn't imagine. Like not even like remotely fathom what was going through his head.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't definitively answer whether what he did was right or not. I don't know. Which I like when you do that to characters and when you write a character like that, because it makes them human. Because as a human, we all do shit that isn't always good or right, and makes him more human. So curious to see where that goes. That was it basically. We got the preview, nice little preview. More Alice, more um, Officer Drake, and any major predictions. You solved that one thing, which completely went over my head.
I had mine too there for a minute.
Any major predictions before we leave?
I think that no, I was going to say I'm a smart ass, but I don't know. Like I
No.
think that they overloaded us with information on purpose uh, to make it a legit whodunit. Like we don't know. I think that it's multiple people, and I don't know who they are all working for. Who does number two work for? But I think that there's going to be several people, and I don't know who the main figurehead is going to be yet.
Yeah, I agree. I have no idea. I'm enjoying the ride. I believe 6 more episodes. I believe it's 8 total. And
According to IMDb,
is, is that what it says? 8?
yeah,
Yeah.
8.
And so, yeah, thanks for listening. If you're still with us, appreciate it. Like I said, we'll be posting a Hamilton review on Friday, and on Saturday, the goal is to get an ID4 review up. So,
Goddamn
yeah.
right.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. So, there you go. Yeah, when obviously another Perry Mason review next Sunday night. So, have a good week. Be safe out there, and we'll see you Friday. All right.
Bye.
Bye.